Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to my live today. I'm Angelo Robles, and welcome to my At Family Office and Angelo Robles podcast. And for my members of SFO Continuity, always appreciate you. Wow, we are in for, I know I say this because I have such incredible guests, but a real treat and something that I think is very important. By coincidence, we planned my return guest today, who's incredible, on geopolitics. Kind of forgot a little bit about Davos, and Davos has given us so much to talk about. The last time I had our current guest on, which we're going to reference, was a year and a half ago. The world has changed a lot. We went 3 hours and 7 minutes, my longest interview ever. I don't think we're going to be 3 hours today, but this will be a longer form conversation. And buckle up. I think it's going to get very, very interesting. I'm calling this Geopolitics 2026, US politics, China, Venezuela, Europe, Davos, the Arctic Scramble, and where smart money moves next. We have a special guest today. That would be Jason Ma, founder of 3EQ. Jason is among the most thoughtful people I know around the world in the family office community, and really one of the very few that has the diversity to go very, very deep in something like geopolitical issues. Jason has an incredible background as an entrepreneur, as a thought leader, as a technologist, as someone who's very active in the community, and really one of the world's greatest educators for families of wealth. We have so much to discuss. Understand, and I know I said this now for my second podcast in a row, but today it's extra important. Most family offices are optimized for order, but history doesn't reward order. Honestly, it rewards preparation under chaos. And right now, the capability under pressure has really, I could make the statement, has never been greater. When family offices, often billionaire families, are interviewed or surveyed, what's the most important thing that is going to be impactful to them moving forward? Ex the US, it's always geopolitics. Now, for 4 years running, in the US, that falls to like number 2 or 3. A lot of US people are wrong about that. So, international folks, I think you're right. This is a grave concern. And I'm going to do this interview a little bit different with my first series of questions, which are going to be unique. We're going to get right to it. And then I promise you, broadly, Davos and what's going on around the world. So let's go. One, Jason Ma, it's great to have you back.
It's such an honor and pleasure to be back with you, Angelo. This is our 5th episode together. Huh? I think we did 3 when you were president or CEO with Family Office Association. My second with your Family Office TV. So congratulations with what you built so far.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. Jason, you were on July of 24, so about 18 months ago. We had a deep geopolitical discussion that was heading into the elections here in the US. Obviously, a lot has changed. Trump won. I could state, rewrote some of the global order. What did, and a unique first question, hopefully it's not going to catch you too off guard. What did family offices get really wrong since I had you on last, especially last year, and effectively Trump's first year in his second term?
Well, you kind of mentioned that geopolitics, governments are, to me, and also to one of the 3 founders of Call Our Group, Dan Aniello, we both agree that governments are probably the biggest risk. You have to really pay attention. So when you and I did that 3-hour plus powwow on geopolitics in July 2024, I think, that was during the election. Who the heck knows who's going to win? But after Trump took over and Trump 2.0, now I would say that it's like Trump 2.5. Absolutely, the global order has been revised. And there's a lot of things. So no one can predict that. And another key factor is the speed of the AI solution stack, the ecosystem, power, energy, infrastructure, chips, just like what Jensen Huang mentioned, right? The AI stack is sort of like a 5-layer cake. You got the chips, you got the infrastructure, the energy, the data centers that powers that. And a lot of family offices are into that. We see that day and night, right, in terms of deal flow. And then you have the, layers above that, the edge, the cloud AI, edge physical AI, and now it's all the rage. And then applied AI, which has so much potential and quite a bit of excitement there. I'm involved with that certainly. So I don't want to do any sweeping generalization and say that family offices got it all wrong. It really depends on the person, depends on the family, depends on the team. And some got it right, some got it wrong. And sometimes it's really an educated guess. But absolutely, I would encourage everyone to become more and more geopolitically, in addition to being financially, geoeconomically astute. I'm doing the same thing with my own family, with my Gen Z working daughters, as well as my private students and mentees.
And for those of you that state that I tend to be generally very pro-American, and I do admit I wear some of my libertarian and perspectives on my sleeve, I am often wrong. I'm willing to have new information, and I do adapt my opinion. By the way, the last two guests I've had on were from Europe. Look at my interview with Philip Markovici, who self-admitted when I asked him, "Are you a globalist?" basically said yes. I respect Philip. We disagreed. I was more than happy to have him on, and I do recommend going to @Family Office or Family Office TV and watching it. And earlier this week, from Swiss in the UK, I had on Johnny Haycock, Macro and Gold. We discussed a lot. And again, I am open to disagreements so we learn. We're not looking for a consensus. I'm not looking for a groupthink. And I do want to be more interactive, like I was with Johnny Haycock, with audience questions. So be a little patient. I promise the best I could to weave them in. We called and discussed back then 18 months ago, and it's becoming to roost a little bit now with Japan, Bank of Japan, yen carry trade. Buffett now is massively in cash. What did, I don't know if I'd use the word we, but maybe many family offices missed, and you hinted at one, the massive rise of AI and a lack of understanding. I will agree with you, Europeans, on this. Americans do need to be better with their global perspective out of the US. They have to travel more and get more acquainted with different cultures and different things happening around the world. What was a massive whiff that may have cost families a lot of money?
Timing, very important. I think when it comes to anything complicated or projects or anything important to you, to us, I think in terms of the line items in the critical success factors, timing is always very important. And for those that are able to have the, I guess, the mindset, the skills, the connections, the attractiveness, the communication capability to attract the right deals and get in early enough so that your multiple over invested capital on power, on grid, on chips, on data centers, and now, moving into the edge and AI, then your MOIC could have probably an extra zero to that, right? So I think rather than say getting all emotionally kind of revved up and kind of buying on all these deceptive headlines out there, be very careful. And I'm sure that a lot of you are in the audience are very sophisticated. I remember when I wrote for Forbes, right, for 5-6 years, and I became a star contributor, and a lot of my articles went viral, meaning a couple 100,000 views, 500,000 views, whole bunch of my virals, whole bunch of my articles. I learned a lot about journalism from the working directly with the managing editor in Forbes. And those headlines, you have to craft it very clearly. So for example, I wrote an article called When to Say No to Harvard. I did not say that. The guy said, Jason, your headline's boring, use mine. Okay, sure, you know what you're talking about. But what I wrote about is something not to say no to Harvard, is really about something else, right? Kind of, all the sort of, I'm not going to go into that. So I would say, got to be very, very careful with the legacy, with the mass media. And when I was I was doing a whole bunch of research. I had done dozens of hours of research before going to this talk, Angelo. And I find that 93% of all the news regarding a particular topic right now is really negative. But that's not what's really happening. What about all the good news out there? What about all the positivity out there? Why don't you talk about that in a weighted average that actually reflects truth? So what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of untruths, there's a lot of deceptions out there. Got to be very, very careful. So do real good research and don't get all emotional, but really kind of do deep research, and understand how the world really works. And that's my encouragement. So I think probably some family offices and families and investors kind of missed the boat a little bit, but it's never too late. I don't think there's a AI bubble per se. There's so much opportunities. The U.S. is going to spend probably over $1 trillion or close to $1 trillion spending, adding directly into the GDP this year just to build out the AI infrastructure. There's so much to build, right? In addition to the layers about that. So
Yeah, I mean, broadly, I agree. I could argue, even myself, going back 18, 19 months ago, AI was even bigger than I thought. Now, a lot of people identify me being very active with AI. I think family offices need to integrate it from an architectural, kind of an institutional perspective, and look at it where it's going to touch everything. It's horizontal, it's underrated even to this day. We won't necessarily get into the bubble aspect of it, those come and go. The reality is, the world, as you know, like I hinted, and we hinted back in July, no longer exist from the past. I would say that's more extreme now. So, in a slightly unusual question, as we're looking now here in middle late January of 2026, what family offices, not necessarily names per se, but their structure, their governance, are going to be obsolete in this world moving forward? And what could they do to adapt? The scary part to me is the ego, the arrogance, and sometimes the fear that get in the way of adaptation and change. We're rich. We're always going to be rich. Everything is fine. My people are awesome. They're the best. When in reality, there's good, there's mediocre, there's bad, and often very bad. And honestly, most family offices, I don't think, especially in this world, are really prepared. So I tend to be a little critical. I know that gets me blowback and hate from the community. You may have a little softer or a different approach, but I think to a large extent, a lot of family offices, I hate to say the word, could be in trouble, but they're not going to be as opportunistic or even hedging risk as they could, not preparing for some of the things we're going to talk about today. How about you? What do you think?
Well, you raise a good point. I think status quo per se is not going to work. You got to go deeper, get help. Kind of understand what the hell is going on in the undercurrent in the world, right? Domestically, regionally, locally, and globally, internationally. So if you keep, as a family office, single family offices, if you keep using the 2010 globalization playbook, if you will, it's not going to work. If you are sort of ignorant on not really adapting and using and being resilient and recognizing and not really kind of powering your family, your team in your family office to be to what I call becoming world-class learner. Learn critical complex things, especially AI, as quickly as possible and apply it. You're going to get left behind. So I think it's a matter of its resilience against all the geopolitical and political and governmental volatility, the turbulence and adaptability, the speed of making precise decisions. Don't just sit around. And it's sort of like whenever I hear investors investing in early stage AI tech startups, they say, "Oh, I'm not going to invest in it until we do massive due diligence and read analyst research and all that." By the time you do that, you're way the hell too late. You're about 9 quarters, 3 quarters, 9 months too late, and you miss the deal. You have to have the visionary growth mindset. And my encouragement to everyone, my family included, as well as my friends, my private clients, my own tech company, is that the adaptability and the ability to make good, precise decisions under pressure, under stress. And in my own mentorship framework, 4S and 3EQ, and I say it again and again because it's so true, after 20,000 hours of doing that, your pragmatic, emotional, social leadership intelligence cannot be even more important individually as a team. your visionary story, your belief system. What are your limiting beliefs that you mentioned are ego, right? So I wrote a set of articles recently. The title is Single Family Offices, Ultra Net Worth Individual Investors, the Rise of Smart Direct AI Tech Investing. In there, part of what I talked about is that you got to be very careful, because a lot of investors that I see are missing the boat. It's your big ego, it's your fear, it's a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, and false assumptions. I see false assumptions all the time from my friends and connections that are otherwise very intellectual, very intelligent, but they force themselves and make decisions and actions, or indecisions and inaction, in ways that's based on off the mark assumptions. Once your assumptions and beliefs are off the mark or wrong, you're going to make the wrong decisions. It's that simple. So reflect a bit. I think it's very important. I think you have a few more dozen questions for me, right?
Oh, yeah, probably 40 or 50. I'm going to make a comment to really kickstart our more geopolitical discussion, which will probably be 2 hours plus. We'll see how that goes. We're both opinionated, so it could be intriguing, and I do want to involve the audience. I will start with a little bit of a comment that doesn't need feedback. It'll kickstart our conversation from questions I'll have in 1 minute. Listen, I understand from the global perspective, we're both travelers. Generally, a lot of the world, specifically Europe, and we're seeing World Economic Forum, aka WEF, some call it broadly Davos. So our timing is perfect for what we're doing. Is Donald Trump, our current president, in my perspective, an incredible unifier? Is he willing to look past, not let ego get in the way? He's imperfect with that. And I do agree, for those that could be critical, I do question his ability to be a unifier. Do I think that with ICE and certain immigration issues, it went one notch too far? But protecting the borders is the most important thing, foundationally, I believe, that a president could do. But I would disagree with some of the ways it has been handled. Do I like talk about a third term, aka king? No, I do not. Do I like some of the self-dealing and interest things that I see going on? No. And I don't know, spend appears to be happening, whether Democrats or Republicans are in order. I am willing to vote, whether Republican or Democrat. I'm not locked in either way. Every candidate's going to be imperfect. And we have one who's a president now that I think does some things very, very well, but certain things that I very much would disagree with. I'm going to come at you with 3 comments that are effectively coming out of WEF. And I would like, we're going to basically riff upon this, and it's going to come hard hitting, everyone. European countries, let's just be honest, they're incredibly stagnated. NVIDIA alone, admittingly the largest one in the world, one US company is worth more than Germany, France, and UK stock markets combined. I believe NVIDIA, quote unquote, has greater value than the entire, quote unquote, Canadian economy. Europe has wickedly low fertility rates. They are, I don't know, like they're going to disappear with the cultures and unifying morality that we know from the countries in relatively short order. And rather bluntly, and here's the hardest hitting one, you're just not competitive on anything related to high tech, not blockchain, not crypto, definitely not robotics and AI, certainly not space tech or drones. Absolutely nothing. And it's concerning to the future, including some of my cultural heritage, my travels to Europe, my enjoyment of it, and it leaves me very frustrated. So I come out here banging, taking some riffs from Davos. I'm not the biggest fan of this globalization. And even 20 years ago, I wasn't a big fan of Davos, but that's just me. So I come out swinging there, Jason. What do you think about what I said?
Man, there are a couple of questions embedded in there, but since Davos is still going on now, let's probe into Europe. And when Ursula, the EU president, made the speech yesterday about the new initiative called EU Inc., my immediate thought is that, okay, we'll see about that. You're right, Angelo. You mentioned that Europe has been suffering from a bit of a, I would not say degrowth, but it's, you really need to have innovation. You really need to, it's kind of like building a company, or as an investor, you want to, your portfolio companies, or as an entrepreneur, you want your company to build great value for customers and partners and return big bucks. As a byproduct framework, the benefit to the investors, to the founders, senior executives, right? And you also want to mitigate risks very carefully. Given that ethos, first principle, I myself, you know me enough to be very outcome focused, okay? I'm a bit more tolerant in people's style, in organizational style, but I'm outcome focused. But your visionary direction's got to be sound. It's got to be, top notch, right? But once the worst thing to do, one of my articles that I wrote is called the 12 greatest young entrepreneurs or something like that, or best entrepreneurs, is like, if you spend a lot of time and energy climbing on the wrong ladder, that's the worst thing, because the greatest cost to you will be opportunity loss and also long-term regret. So think about that. Europe has been suffering from a lack of innovation. It's like regulation, innovation, lack of innovation in many ways. It does have strong industrial manufacturing power, particularly in Germany. Okay, part of that are their strengths, cars, for example, but the regulation paralysis. And the joke for some Americans is that, okay, American, we focus on, kind of real tech AI innovation, some process innovation, business model innovation, other types of innovation. Europe is regulation innovation. More regulations to make it even more onerous to start, build, grow. You can't do that. So when Ursula presented their EU Inc. yesterday, that makes it much easier to form, to set up companies, to kind of do this and all that within the 27 member countries in the EU. Europe's got about 44 countries. We'll see about that. I hope they're going to succeed, because we want a successful Europe and UK and Switzerland. Of course, some countries are not in the EU per se. We as Americans, we want them to succeed. We are great allies. We are partners, you see. So, Greenland, I'm sure that we're going to probe deeper in that. There's a lot of implications.
It's coming.
It's coming. And then the elephant in the room from the West standpoint is really China, a bit of Russia, depending on the context. And you mentioned about Trump. Once again, I got friends all over the political spectrum. I love them all. I literally have good friends from the far left to the far right, kind of flaming liberal to super conservative, kind of, ultra religious. I have friends that I love them all. My encouragement when I get on stage, chairing family office forums, or when I coach people, is that, work and socialize with everyone. Okay. So make sure that you're not biased. So for example, A16Z, the famous Andreessen Horowitz, Ben Horowitz voted for Kamala, Mark Andreessen voted for Trump. You go for the most successful venture capital firm ever, is Sequoia Capital. Doug Leone, we know each other, is close to 10 billion in net worth, is a Republican for Trump. And then, Mike Moritz, also a multi-billionaire, right? Former managing partner. He's a Democrat voter. They work real well together. That's my encouragement. It's a core message in this thing. Be really embracive, and you don't have to spend too much time with each other in certain contexts, but work well with each other. Respect.
I mean, the whole perspective to me, one, they have mass challenges that I hinted at in terms of just births. So immigration, they'll deem as being needed. What is it doing to unifying their morality and culture? Well, I don't know, but you can make some comments that would not be as positive. Socialism reigns. The fact that now we have a constitution in the US that allows us, quote unquote, freedom of speech. The fact that I could be jailed for a retweet or something that I say, and the things that people have been jailed by the many thousands are utterly shocking to someone who believes in libertarian values, that believes in freedom. And I get it from my perspective as an American. If I go to another country, I guess I should be respectful for what their rules are. I do understand that.
Right.
The taxation incredibly high, the lack of innovation, and the U.S. picking up a lot of the military aspects, including what the Polish president mentioned, I believe it was yesterday in Davos. It's unfair. So if we have that more balanced out, what are your taxes going to go from 50, 60 to 70, 80%? in these countries, which effectively are socialist countries, Norway and Finland yapping about that they're going to be able to have the military might to quote unquote take action and do things. One, do they even have the will to do it? I would say broadly no. And that could get into a deeper discussion relative to their populace. But from the more surface level, and a lot of people of great wealth, including from the UK, have left quietly, where it's easier for them to have tax arbitrage, that we don't have those edges or advantages as US citizens or green card holders. A lot of them taking their wealth, their expenditures, their intellect, their building companies, their tax base to other countries. What do you think happens to a society when people that are that productive effectively move on? It seems to be a negative downward trend that has been happening decade after decade after decade. And I don't mean to treat Europe as one. They're individual countries, although some part of the European Union, I do understand. I'm gravely concerned and do believe that there is effectively no hope for a lot of what I see. It's trending in a very negative direction. Now, what my question for you, I'm going to read a little bit from Howard Lutnick. He has spoken at one of my events back in my family office association days in the past. I can't say I'm always the biggest fan, but I think he really nailed it. Some of the things he noted were offshoring has effectively hollowed out the West. Cheap labor destroyed innovation. Net zero made Europe dependent on China. Sovereignty begins, well, with borders. Obviously, nations must control their industry, energy, and effectively medicine and infrastructure, and that hasn't happened. Now, has that, you could state, lower cost of goods, maybe that's good. It probably did serve a purpose at a time in the past, but we're not in that time now. We're in gravely challenging times. And that promise of globalism, that socialistic perspective, I think effectively Lutnick nailed it better than I could. To me, it's been a dismal failure.
Angelo, we could, in this conversation, we could go one or either ways, right? I could go with you in terms of jumping around, or we stay with global, the US, go macro, go micro, and then Europe, UK included, and then we'll go China, Venezuela, Greenland, etc. And because there's a lot of questions within each topic, if you will. But I think on a macro basis, what's really going on is that when the U.S. sneezes, much of the world gets a cold. It is what it is. Because America is that consequential, impactful, and it is certainly being the rules are being rewritten. And when Trump set up the Board of Peace, and the objective there is really kind of shift the power, because the UN, it's like a question, an objective question. How come the UN was not effective or did not care much about stopping a whole bunch of the wars? But Trump did. 8 wars. Okay, wars are extremely damaging to people, deaths, economics, infrastructure, supply chain, etc., etc. And it's like you could love or hate Trump, you could love or hate Israel, but my encouragement to people is don't be gaslighted, don't be deceived. What are the real more important outcomes? Kind of shelve people's emotion, and what are the real important outcomes? What Trump is doing, and I've been studying him since Trump 1.0 to now Trump 2.5, I would say, I have noticed clearly that his own persona remains the same in many parts, because he's the master deal maker. He's intentionally troll people just to kind of provoke a little bit to get people on the table, and he sets the table and negotiate. Once you're with him in a room, he's going to win, because he and his team is such a master negotiator. And it's about, just like politicians, right? It's about power, money, and votes in no particular order. Power is very important. The elephant in the room is really China. It's not a secret to the West, okay? And Russia, when it comes to potential damage because of the war power. So, you look at Europe, you look at Greenland, we go into Greenland right now, and I agree with you. I hate it when I see that people tweet certain things that are politically incorrect. They go to jail in the UK. That is just wrong. That's just wrong. Okay. I grew up in San Francisco, so socially I'm very open-minded, very liberal. But when it comes to the older I get, the more wisdom I pick up, the more I understand how the world works. Is like, we better really fix the foundation and then protect the core. And then in the edges, we have a bit more optionality, but be very wise on how we visualize that, strategize that, execute that. So going back to the reordering, Greenland is part of the equation. We could jump into Greenland right now. It's really about the Golden Dome. You look into it's like people complain about the sovereignty of Denmark. I respect that. I've been one of a few Americans who got appointed to the G20 in the B20, which is the Global Business Advisory Council for the forum for the G20, 11 years in a row. So I see quite a bit from that, from other situations as well. We really, the point is not to step on people's toes. The point is we need to secure the defense. We need to plan ahead because the ice is melting. There's going to be new Arctic routes, not to mention some good minerals we could take advantage of. And when you look at NATO, right now, NATO is such a big thing, Davos and all that. But when I analyze the numbers, right, in the past decade, the United States has been contributing 60 plus to 70 plus % of total NATO budget. And the budget is today is like 1.3 trillion. Think about that. And now Denmark is a tiny country. I love the Danes, right? 5 million, small country, small economy, small military. But if it gets into trouble, if Russia attacks them, then NATO is going to protect them. But you cannot be an entitled little brat and complain and kind of while you're sort of semi-freeloading. And around the world, there's a lot of freeloading or semi-freeloading. When Trump bluntly said that America is being taken advantage of, he's not kidding you. I agree. I see that all the time. I travel 2 to 3 million miles. I've done a lot of business, right? So connections, that's really the truth. And he simply lift up the band-aids in all over the world. No one likes that because if you're status quo, if you're benefiting from that, it's going to hurt you. But you have to wake up to the reality and certain things that Trump is doing. It's like I care about outcomes. I care about economics. I care about security, strong military. I'm in Silicon Valley. I care about innovation. I care about being number one in AI and tech. I care about the security of my daughters, of my students, of my friends, of my family. I care about all that. Those are outcomes. The style of how they do it, I have a bit more tolerance for that. I have noticed that Trump has gone a lot more diplomatic on how he communicates. And once again, I encourage people not to get all so insulted and frustrated. It's like I call it don't play the devil's game.
And let's focus a little bit in Greenland because new information has come out effectively in the last couple of hours today with Trump's conversation. I'm going to lead that part of it, though, Jason, and maybe my year's a little off. I believe it was 1917, World War I. Think about it. The U.S. purchased the U.S. now the U.S. Virgin Islands, a U.S. territory, from guess who? Denmark.
Absolutely.
And why they thought about it from the rise of Germany, having effectively greater access from a variety of perspectives to our U.S. Western Hemisphere. So just a little bit of irony there. So I was going to talk about Greenland from Trump using some strong words, rhetoric, talking about 51st state, going a little bit back from military intervention, but using economic means that would be every bit as powerful. And I get it. It was over the top, concerning to many, but did it work? And the deal still has to be finalized. And no, it's, I guess, not going to be a 51st state, but it looks like he effectively got what is going to be, admittingly, valuable to the U.S., I think valuable broadly to NATO in the West, and protective from the rare earths, the energy, the ports, and how things are changing again with climate change and shipping routes. You mentioned the dome. So why don't I allow you to have an opportunity to give an update to the audience on where we appear to be now. That could change in the next hour or tomorrow with Greenland, and why it may be important to all of us as I describe.
Okay, once again, be outcome focused, be results focused, okay? What the US, once again, if the US sneezes, the world gets a cold. If the US is weak in NATO, NATO is going to be super weak. Okay, that's a derivative effect. It is that simple, because it's sort of like, private equity. Okay, you could acquire 100% of a company, you own it, or you acquire the majority, you still control it. And there are creative structures where you still pretty much get all the terms that you want. So when a soft deal, the framework was struck, was it yesterday? And my educated guess is that it's rather favorable for the U.S. and implicitly for Europe. Seriously, because once again, what's important to America is defense and also potential offense. And I'm not going to spend too much time going into the military implications, but land, maritime, sea, space. That when I, in fact, I had the globe in front of me. Did you guys know that the tip of Greenland and the tip of Alaska is only about 1/2 of the length of the continental U.S.? They're actually not that far off. Okay, when you look at two-dimensional map versus a 3D thing, and I encourage Americans to really kind of get to know where Israel is, because a lot of Americans don't even know geographies worldwide.
So, that is true.
When I travel so much, right? So many Asians and Europeans and Middle Easterners, Arabs know a lot more about America than America know about them. Let's be vigilant. Let's be earnest. Let's be a bit more vigorous. Be more vigorous and becoming a world-class learner. Really learning about how the world works out there. So going back to Greenland, I believe that when it comes to military, defense and offense, check. When it comes to the potential maritime dominance, protection, you don't want to have Russia or China, it's public information, nothing new, okay, to have their say and ways to kind of send their submarines and ships all over the place, right? You want to have control on that. It is strategically and pragmatically very important. Not to mention a bit of minerals that are rather sizable in terms of raw critical minerals, whether it is under land, mostly under deep ice. And that also has quite a bit of investment and business opportunities when you look at the whole stack. And I remember when I met with the number 3 or number 2 guy in Saudi Aramco, which of course the biggest oil, Saudi Arabia, right? Saudi Aramco. And I was helping an enterprise do a humongous project, a bit of a global rainmaking, major deal making. And I learned that, when it comes to oil extraction, it's upstream. And you got a horizontal, the transport, horizontal logistics, and then the downstream. Downstream is where you produce from crude, from rough black oil, I'm simplifying things, into products, right? And then at the very end, you have to really refine, because of sulfurization and all that. It's very complicated. So it's like business. There's a lot of business opportunities all over. Venezuela, not to mention the geopolitical, the military, but there's a lot of business and investment opportunities. Of course, some investors and companies want to get some certainty that they're not going to waste and the risk is too high, right? So risk tolerance. So I'm sure the Trump administration is working very hard on that to stabilize it. And then Cuba is going to be very interesting because they depend on quite a bit of advantage of oil. We could talk about that as well. So going back to Greenland, I think in summary, I think we're going to be securing what we want from an American standpoint, which is exciting.
I agree. And even Samuel in comments notes it's essential, meaning Greenland, for America to assert dominance. And I know some from other parts in the world may look at that as a little bit of cringe. I understand. I have to look at it from the perspective, thinking globally, of what's going on in the Middle East, challenges with Russia and China. And China, we'll get to them, is not only an incredibly worthy adversary, they are definitively ahead in certain areas that I think may be gravely challenging to the US and Western democracy from my perspective as I look at it. Uh, I do want to cover a little bit, staying within the Davos, as I'm calling it, framework. BlackRock's Larry Fink, and I'm going to read to make sure I get it correctly, told the World Economic Forum in one of his conversations, the world must move faster towards digitalized currencies. I'm okay with that. I'm very fluid in that. And he's not incorrect. It's the second part of it that would cause some concerns and make a lot of people, where even people from the left and the right may agree with me broadly on this, the concept of globalization, the concept that he talks about under a single, that's the issue, a single unified blockchain to reduce corruption. So that blockchain, where our capital is or will be, as he wants it in the future, that governments could stop the spigot. I have no access to my capital because I'm not following their clean energy initiative, or I'm eating more than 5 pounds of meat per month for family. I do not like any of those conversations. He's a smart man. They're a wonderful company. I'm sure they do some good. But that kind of talk, that Klaus Schwab type talk that he's taking more of the lead on now, meaning Larry Fink, one world order, I hear that and I think of to the impact of you're going to owe nothing and be happy. And I know that was a little out of context from when Schwab said that a couple of years ago. What do you think about Fink's perspective of that single unified blockchain to quote unquote reduce corruption?
You know, I admire Larry Fink for his smarts and might, and a great leader, leading BlackRock. I think he's an American treasure. You know, congratulations to all the folks that have been successful financially and whatnot in crypto and blockchain and all that. There's a lot of business in that. Great for them. But you know, decentralized in some ways is good, I guess. But you got to be very careful. Once you have a global order controlled by some centralized powers, very dangerous. Very dangerous. So, like you mentioned, if certain higher ups, whether it is public sector or integrated or hybrid private sector or PPP, public private sector, have great control globally, digitally at the fingertips, it's extremely dangerous. Now, I'm not going to talk about, you know, faith and Bible and all that, but for the couple of billion Christians out there, for those that are devout and understand Revelation 12 and 13, you know what I'm talking about. The beast system, you don't want that because that you're going to accelerate, you know, what the Christians would call end times. Let's skip talking about that in this particular conversation. So, got to be very careful on talks like that. You know, I've been once again, I'm one of a few Americans. There's only a handful get appointed to the B20, the G20's official business forum. I see a lot when it comes to multilateralism, and I've been sitting in a future of work, education, human capital, skills, employment task force for the past 11 years, right? So, and this year is very exciting because finally, after a cycle, the United States is leading the G20, and the B20 is part of that, and the B20 G20 summit is going to be in Miami. I'm very excited about that. So, and I'm sure that we are revising a few things. My caution to all my friends and connections here: be very careful. Do not allow centralized digital control global.
Yes, and the key word there is centralized. The key words to me would be programmable, quote unquote, money. Might this be inevitable? It might. I don't want to see it in my lifetime. And certainly something, again, a believer in freedoms, that is just not acceptable to me. There is a question that came in that would bring it back to effectively family offices and looking at it from a risk perspective, so to speak, from Xavier. It's a little bit complex. He states regulatory shifts, counterparty risk, jurisdictional hostility, the quiet arrival of a war economy. Family offices model these or separate contingencies. How many have prepared as a single condition, which is arguably, like we began with, a new world and way more chaos. That goes back a little bit to the earlier question that I did ask you, Jason. You travel the world, you meet with the super rich and family offices. Where are they falling short understanding some of the things that we are discussing? I particularly like the part Xavier noted on counterparty risk, gravely underestimated by the majority of family offices.
Right. And I think you're gonna have a couple of questions for me regarding U.S. politics later, right? But when it comes to your portfolio management, kind of take it to the next level. Built-in geopolitical risk tolerance is like when you are preserving your wealth, you're growing your wealth. Now it's not only that traditional family office or ultra net worth family equation, right? Wealth preservation and growth is really also smart, wise, incisive, precise adaptability and speed of decision making. Do not allow these highly intellectual MBA sitting and committing investment committee and kind of go up bureaucracy and talk. Okay, I see that happen all the time. There's a lot of stupidity as I see out there, frankly, bluntly speaking. There's some great CIOs out there. There's some great investment committees, but do not allow it to be degrade and sort of just kind of, one of the things I noticed, right? It's not 80% mechanics. It's 80% psychology, 20% mechanics. It's not the other way around. It's not 80% mechanics, 20% psychology. It's 80% psychology, which includes your mindset, which is kind of your belief system, your skills, your character, along with your emotional, spiritual, mental state of mind management. How strong is that? Which part of that equation can you improve on? You see? So when it comes to this gentleman's comment and question, jurisdiction is very important. The Senate, who the hell knows, the House may flip, comes midterms. And then you might have Trump is still going to have the EO power and his power, but the legislation part, House and the Senate, assuming the Senate is going to stay Republican, the House is going to flip to Democrats, you're going to have a quagmire. You're going to have some standstill, right? So how do you account for that? Does your portfolio, is it built in, or your next level portfolio, does it account for all that? How adaptable are you? How fast and quick and smart and connected are you? Are you getting help to kind of navigate your optionality around the edges? Protect your core. If you think your core is very sound, protect that, right? Kind of ring fence that. But your adaptability, your resilience, your 4S and 3 EQ, I think it's going to come in pretty handy.
Yeah, I mean, Xavier, you ask a complex question that's a little off topic to the core for today. And I have talked about this, and I've consulted to families, including American families that are too siloed in American thinking and their resources. You need an onshore and multiple offshore plan, resources, diversity from some level of U.S. exposure, direct ownership of gold and Bitcoin that is not with counterparty, quote unquote, risk, or as close as you could get. Work that you do in your foundations, complexity of intertwining your resources, deep connections around the world, becoming anti-fragile. There is no easy answer. It's complex. I would use the word sanctuary locations in cities, different from the way that we're looking at it now here in the US from a different perspective, but having resources in Switzerland, possibly parts of the Middle East, in Singapore, LATAM, a Paraguay, a Uruguay. Now, that takes more effort, more work. It may not even yield greater results in the short term, but it mitigates risk and helps to address counterparty risk. Is in some ways a claim that you have on your assets and resources. It's not quite bearer like a gold bar or crypto in my hand. So again, it's a snippet of an answer that's very complex and a little off topic, but indirectly relates to the conversation we're having today. Jason, we won't spend
Angela, let me add to that. Absolutely. And it really depends on, be anti-fragile. You use that term quite a bit. I agree. Be anti-fragile, especially Gen Z millennials. So be anti-fragile. And, we do need to have some solid assets that it's gonna stick around no matter what, right? Based on like some key commodities, some key real estate. Those are good things, right? Because they're not gonna go away. Although
They could be taken from you.
California, which is one of the top, it could be semi taken from you, which is not good. But I agree, right?
It's not too portable.
It also depends on, I guess, the size of a pocketbook. When it comes to multi-billionaire single-family offices, they tend to be a bit more conservative in protecting what they have. They're not gonna, write, like a $100,000 check to do angel investing, invest in 1,000 companies, right? And my joke is that these 8 to 9 figure, the ordinary centimillionaire SFOs, some of them still want to add a zero to the net worth, so the risk tolerance is a bit higher. But some, yeah, absolutely, certain. I'm not gonna mention particular countries, but you do have to diversify in ways where it's not diversification. It's really built in geopolitical resilience. Because once again, governments and geopolitics are probably the biggest risk. You have to stay on top of that. In addition to use, like, one of your core, Angelo, you're pretty good in doing that, is helping your clients build AI into the family office process. It also depends on, once again, the type of family offices, ultra net worth families. You could be mere 8 figures, you could be 11 figures. Those are different equations.
The irony, my audience will be surprised coming from my mouth, doing that wrong or over reliance in some ways currently, including with AI, could actually make you more fragile. So there's complexities and nuances to that. And even the other aspects in terms of what you said, agreed. And again, Xavier, it's a complexity of answers that is not so easy. And the Gen Z generation, and I'm being broad, that Jason brings up, they're not showing a lot of anti-fragility to me. We may get to that when we talk about the massive rise of socialism in the US, Mamdani as the mayor and kind of the why, and trends that we're starting to see, but we have a long conversation. I won't spend too much time, but a couple of things have come in saying, and I don't think Davos has addressed this too much, but I might be wrong. And it's in part of the world that I'm not quite as fluid in, so I'm going to throw it to you. And that would be the Middle East, mainly in Iran. We obviously bombed their nuclear program, meaning the US, last summer. There's insurrection in the streets. We're hearing different things. I don't have a complete picture. I don't know if it's been heavily covered at Davos. You're more experienced in that part of the world. What do you see going on? And why should family offices care? And what could they do?
It's super important. It's multi-layered. Okay. I would start off, all my Persian American friends, Iranian American friends, they're all successful in business. They're very good people. And a lot of them are very tight knit. I love them. Okay. And I bet you when you go to parts of Iran, a lot of them are actually, they want a bit more freedom. They want they want prosperity, just like the West. Okay. Now, so like when it comes to faith and religion, there's a bell curve, correct? You got the far right, blah, blah, blah. You got all sorts of devouts, non-devouts. And when the current regime took over decades ago, their ideals are rather different than the regime before. And the ideology, wiping Israel off the map and kind of take out good part of America, that's been a bit of an ideal. It's a belief system, okay? And the biggest risk to present it to is, sometimes I thought, hey, Dubai is too good to be true. You're so close to Iran. And I'm sure that, kind of UAE and Qatar and Bahrain and Kuwait and a part of Saudi Arabia, they are a bit more relieved now that the potential nuclear weapons of mass destruction powered by Iran, that's been quite diminished, if not semi-permanently. Now, Iran could choose to build new ones, but I don't think the U.S. is gonna let them accelerate in doing that. Now, and another thing is, because the ideology of the leaders are still there, and let's face it, in plain speak, the masses are not happy. The masses are, I'm very saddened by all the killings and all the things, which is not surprising. So I'm hoping for I would not be surprised to see an actual regime disruption in the next 12 or 24 months, if not sooner. Whether it's gonna, one foolish things that Americans did in some countries over the past decades is try to replace their Arabic culture with Western economics. Things don't work like that. Respect them the way they are. Don't change their DNA, but kind of integrate and help them out in ways where there's a lot of investment, a lot of business opportunities while you're rebuilding things. So in summary, I'm a bit relieved that Iran has lost quite a bit of the war power, and Israel is actually extremely capable. If Israel and the US decide to take out Iran, we could actually do it, but we're not going to do that unless there's a need to. So in summary, it's sort of like when it comes to Middle East, when it comes to Arabs, right? I come from Hong Kong. I come from British Hong Kong culture. I speak fluent Cantonese. I speak Mandarin as well, basic. But I'm more American. My joke is that I'm probably more American patriotically than the majority of Americans. And I love the world. I love the United States, right? And my mom come from China. I love the Chinese culture. I love the Chinese people. And the one thing about I'm sure we're going to talk about Taiwan a little bit here, but you have to understand the magnitude of what the face means to these people. The face, right? America, we all have face. We all have pride and ego up to a certain point. When you exceed that, it's not good. But there's some basic pride to that. That's fine. So you have to understand how they really think. And but if one sees that it's going to be very destructive to the West, then we have to do something about that, because stopping that destruction is far more important.
And I'm just gonna, it got under my skin in a good way, Xavier, but your question, meaning in the comments that we addressed a little bit, I want to throw something in because it does broadly relate to our discussion. As a reminder, governments have the ultimate power, including of violence. My guest I had on, Markovici, last week noted he wouldn't be surprised, and he's very much on the left-leaning globalist perspective, and I do respect him. Noted he's not so sure that to stop the outflows of capital and people, that governments in the future may not put controls like, hey, you're a citizen, you can't leave. Also, Xavier, I'd look at what I call the liquidity illusion. You think you're liquid until you're not. The definition of true wealth, maybe it's what you can access and deploy when systems are hostile and broken. Suppose you can't get your stock brokerage accounts. You can't liquidate into a bank. That's where things like gold, Bitcoin, cash at hand, multiple currencies, and an extraction plan from your country. And I'm getting a little bit deep and serious there, but you're entering a little bit of my world and some of the things that I deal with, and I felt I wanted to bring that up. Okay, Jason, we're going to turn a little bit to an important topic. It was very important 2 or 3 weeks ago. Then other things come up, Greenland, Davos, and that would be Venezuela. So obviously, Maduro's out. So who controls exactly Venezuelan oil sector now? Is it the U.S. government, remnants of Chavista bureaucrats, international consortium? I'm not really sure. What insight do you have?
Whether the U.S. government controls it technically per se, I'm not too worried about that. But I think we do have sufficient influence and sufficient. I think we have adequate pathways to move in a direction that is going to be favorable to the U.S., favorable to the Venezuelan people. Guarantee that the masses are relieved that Maduro is out, because you look at the economic downturn, the sufferings the masses have gone through. Okay, never mind these news outlets with their own agenda, provoking certain parts that are anti-American, anti-Trump. Never mind that. There's a lot of deception there. There's a lot of good there, and there are a couple of layers or a couple of elements. You have the you know, the the elephant in the room, some of you know already, is really kind of China, a bit of other countries being very invested in Venezuela and other parts of Latin America, Africa, other parts of the world. Okay. So part of what the US government is doing is to adjust that equation, create revised pathways towards the future on which we could execute nationally and also in favor of a private sector. So when it comes to the power adjustment, it's very important for us. Not to mention a hyper important part, and that is to keep on accelerating the minimization of illegal drugs that's been so destructive to Americans. Of course, there's a supply and demand side, but there's a mentality side, there's a mental health side, there's a supply side. So those are different topics. And like taking out verified, taking out real narc boats, kind of. And then for those semi-illegal or semi-anti-American tankers and all that, those are things in favor of the United States. And not to mention, Venezuela has got so much, liquid gold down there. It's the truth. It's one of the few countries that's got a lot of still untapped, oil that are rather crude. Imagine if you're Saudi Arabia, right? You're allowed to drill and do business, right? They'll be laughing all the way to the bank, right? Adding a lot more revenues and margins. And the U.S. has got a lot of potential there. And I'm sure that the Trump administration is setting the table so that it'll be a bit more confident and secure, and the probability and the risk mitigation is going to be laid out a bit more. And so we'll see how that plays out when it comes to the actual regime, the government components, the people. We'll see how that plays out. I'm curious on the next 12, 18, 24 months about Cuba, because Cuba has been quite dependent on Venezuela oil. And Cuba is not exactly a democratic. I love, I had Cuban cigars before in Hong Kong with my friends, and I enjoying, good old.
You're talking my talk now.
Smuggled cigar, over fine cognac with my friends in Hong Kong. The Asians, the Hong Kongers, the Chinese, the Americans, the Brits, and all that. But let's socially, I think a business, it's a good thing. I think we're moving in the right direction. Now, part of the process, there might be some mistakes made here and there, might be too rough here and there. It is what it is, right? But if the overall, there's got to be some collateral damage. It is what it is. You cannot, once you have law of large numbers, once n equals 30, you have a bell curve. Nothing's perfect, right? So
the
overall is good.
It's unique in Venezuela. I could say Colombian border security, Brazilian resource interest, Cuban,
Right.
as you noted, influence networks, China's Belt Road investments already in Venezuela. So post Maduro, who's fighting for control, and how does that affect either U.S. and even family and investment capital deployment? The risk is pretty significant.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. We'll see. I think overall we are moving in the right direction, and we are also shifting how Latin America, who to do business with, who to watch out for, and who are we helping to reconfigure a little bit, revise the equation so that it's going to be a bit more favorable to Americans further up north. And once again, the elephant in the room from the American standpoint is really, frankly speaking, globally, China. So it's not written so much, and you see a lot of true headlines, but a lot of deceptive headlines and articles rolled out there, and you watch it all the time with good parts of the legacy media. I see it all the time. I'm like, it's like comedy to me. It's like things don't work like that. But I think part of what the administration is doing is, once again, reconfiguring, kind of adjusting the power equation, and not to mention the business opportunities, the growth opportunities against China. And that's within Venezuela as well.
Oh, there was a question that did come in. I don't think Jason and I could audit, so we're not going to know, but I will ask it. Venezuela is widely reported to have the largest proven oil reserves in the world. What about 300 million barrels? But supposedly, per the comment from Primal Key, self-reported, not audited, he calls cap. For those of you over 20, that means nonsense or a lie. So like, how do we verify? We know it's crude as hell, more expensive to utilize, to refine. And again, like, I'm not an auditor, I have no idea, but I did want to ask the question if you have an opinion, Jason.
I think let's not waste time on that because we're limited time in this session. That it's another talk for another time. I think we should move on.
Got it. And there is a question that came in on actually Larry Fink and BlackRock. We did answer that, admittingly a relatively brief answer because we have so many subjects to cover. So I do agree with you. It's of some level of concern. We addressed it about, give or take 20, 25 minutes ago. I mean, really, at the end of the day, a lot of this is going to come down to how does your capital, more than just your access to wealth, your legacy, your intellectual capital, which is part of anti-fragility, survive the next 100 years. And this goes back to a bigger picture that we're looking at for families. And ironically, I think segues into our next section, which is an important one that I hinted at a couple of minutes ago. The rise of socialism in America. Now, I did cover with David Lesperance the California wealth tax, but I'm going to throw it to you since you're very active in California and in a hotbed of where Ro Khanna is and a lot of interesting figureheads in California. The concept of taxing something that hasn't been realized yet, unrealized capital gains that may go down in value while you're taxing, you think it's only going to be for 1 year and only the billionaires. Sure, taxes are only for 1 year and only for the billionaires. You know that's going to trickle down. Right. And you know, to a lot of the blue states that are struggling, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, they're going to think that's a great idea and want to do it. What is your perspective and what are you hearing in the backyard of San Francisco where you're primarily based?
Right. You have two sub questions here. You know, the macro is rise of socialism, and the wealth tax in California, it's a subset manifestation of that. Okay. So for those that might not be well abreast of the wealth tax in California, there's a proposal written up by some union backed by some highly intellectual professor and lawyers, of course, that proposes to tax 5% of the total wealth, whether it's liquid, illiquid, of those that are thought of being billionaires. Okay. So that means that your public holdings, your private holdings, your real estate, your home, your stock, your private company tech holdings that are not liquid yet, your companies, your portfolio companies are not exited, they're gonna tax 5% of your estimated total net worth. That means that there's going to be a lot of auditing, a lot of checking, a lot of examining. They're going to be peeking. It's kind of like you must open the door to your bathroom. You're naked. We're going to have to take a look no matter what. Okay. And the most dramatic example is that Sergey and Larry of Google, they are, I think, the Democrats. I think they left, technically speaking, at least illegally, because if that potential piece of legislature is going to get passed, and they have to collect enough ballots and all that, and go into and get votes and stuff like that. If it gets passed later on this year, it could be retroactive to I think this month, January 2026. Okay, this scared the daylight out of billionaires. That for those that are not so gaslighted and so freaking naive, they know that once already we're potentially losing $1 trillion in potential tax payments to the state of California, or some. I don't know what the math is, but Larry and Sergey, here's another dramatic negative effect on steroids, because they have control over Google, even though they own just a minority share of the Google shares, of Alphabet shares. Google's underneath Alphabet, They have this kind of type B stock where they have, I think, 5 to 10x the voting power. That means that based on the voting power, they could be paying much more tax than they're worth over $200 billion. They're worth about $200 billion. That means like they could be taxed based on an estimate of like $1 trillion each person. 5% of that is like $50 billion. Who on earth would like to pay the state of California that type of tax, right? That scared the daylights out of a lot of billionaires. Unfortunately, some have left. And Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison and a lot of the people that are in the know better than we are. And there's a lot of people thinking about leaving. I'm even thinking about adding a new home somewhere out there in a different part of the United States. And that's not good. I love the Bay Area. I'm a Californian. I'm a Northern Californian. You know, my family and I, we love the Bay Area. It's beautiful. San Francisco is so beautiful. We love it here, not to mention the tech innovation and all that, right? It makes me sad on how stupid people are. You know, now the genesis of that thought being written on paper is that it's socialism at work. Hey, why don't we tax the rich and let them pay for the dysfunctional over budget that we have? California is like tens of billions, kind of, kind of underwater, but when you look at the hundreds of billions of dollars of budget that the state spends, a lot of them is really, and in fact, I think the Trump administration is going to crack down on that. Minneapolis is icing on the cake. It's like tip of the iceberg, okay? And that all the billions and tens of billions of disruption of corruption being discovered by some of the Somalis in there, it is those are true, okay? And what I'm noticing is that it's kind of like, okay, you got all these billions and tens of billions going into the thing, but a lot of situations even got worse, like homelessness over the years. So it's getting a little better, which is good in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. San Jose, Matt Main is doing a great job. Okay, they're both Democrats. You know, San Jose is the biggest city in Northern California, including Silicon Valley. They're both Democrats. They're centrists. They're pragmatists. They're doing a great job. They're anti this wealth tax. Okay, and you know, so in summary, if that happens, if a lot of the potential tax paid by the rich, by the super rich, are leaving, that means that who's gonna pay for it? It's gonna trickle down to the middle class. It is that simple. It is simple math. So it's like victimhood mindset versus victor mindset. So the socialism part of the tenets, one of the tenets is rural victimhood mindset. You know, play some Robin Hood and kind of like, you know, bitch about the rich, but they're lazy asses. They don't believe in growth. They, you know, it's like Memdani, my daughters are in New York City. I'm a little bit concerned about that. Of course, that's a separate conversation. It is just it's anti-growth, anti-entrepreneurship, not to mention all the regulations that are so onerous. You look at Pacific Palisades, part of LA last year got burned down. Okay. I got a close colleague of mine, his son and fiance house got wiped out. And not one single house is built. The regulation, the onerous process, okay, run by these crazy local governments that value safety over pragmatism, but it's like overdone. Once you have a communist single party state and government, then things are getting out of hand. It's like things are not happening. It's so onerous getting permits. Building is so painful for the ecosystem to work, to rebuild. I mean, that's just part of the symptoms of what's wrong with socialism. I could go all day long. Got to be very careful. Socialism is a cousin of communism. Okay, socialism is a cousin of communism. You don't want communism in our country. It's going to be devastating for the country.
You know, with the California wealth tax, when Newsom is against it. Now, I think there's political reasons why.
That I give
but
for political reasons, right?
I said 5 years ago, one day we're going to explore in this country taxing unrealized capital gains. Sadly, I think one day, maybe not this time, I will be proven right. I hope I'm wrong. I look at the leadership when I think of the Democratic Party currently, very different than when I was growing up. I'm thinking of Newsom, of AOC, Ro Khanna, Mamdani. What socialists to the core. Very, very different than my memory even 15, 20 years ago, let alone 30, 40 years ago. On the subject, one, your backyard, San Francisco, the other, one of my backyards, Greater New York. And again, these are the two epicenters of finance in their own way in the US. Politicians incredibly hostile, Mamdani here in Greater New York, to wealth. How do you operate a family office infrastructure in cities that want to tax you to oblivion? Mr. Wonderful states, why would I ever want to start a business in a place like New York City? Why would I want to have a family office based from their taxation and all that, and just the lack of respect and value that you're bringing in taxation and intellectual value in hiring people, in spending capital and resources, driving it all away what appears to be primarily to Florida and Texas. I don't think Florida wants a lot of the New Yorkers, even the rich ones, anymore. They may have enough.
They have quite a bit. They have quite a bit. Being outcome focused, right? Prosperity, safety, strength, innovation, joy, true peace, not some gaslighted, self-righteous BS out there. It's a great concern, man. New York City, I'm very concerned. A lot of people are very concerned. I know a lot of my friends at high places are very concerned. And a lot of them are trying to accelerate leaving. Once again, it goes to jurisdiction, goes to geopolitics, goes to predictability. You have to build in within your core, within your portfolio, recognizing what your risk tolerance, right? And kind of make some wiser predictions, work with wise advisors, and all that. I'm very concerned. When it comes to those political individuals you mentioned, they are, not to mention Elizabeth Warren, not to mention Bernie Sanders. But
I kind of forgot about them.
Now, Ro Khanna is a great guy, man. He's a very smart guy, but maybe because of the way I see it, I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but it's okay. He's thinking about his future. He's still a young guy. I think he's in his 50s. He's the world's ahead of him. He's already probably projecting that progressive socialism is going to be the majority. Okay, why don't I get on to this boat now? You see, and Newsom, it's public information. You can even go to YouTube and kind of type in, right? When Willie Brown, a former San Francisco mayor, one of the things I like about him is that he made the San Francisco, the mayor, the building, put some gold over it. It looks look more glamorous. I kind of like that, actually. It looks kind of nice. Willie, Newsom was his mentee for a long time. He said publicly, a couple of years ago, he was smiling and said that Gavin Newsom wanted to be president yesterday. He's politically very ambitious. He wanted to be president yesterday. A guy like Newsom, I've been watching him for a long, long time, right? Ever since he was a SF mayor, very slick, very handsome, gray hair. And I was very grateful, even went to one of his vineyards for a family office summit. I'm grateful for. But, he's one of those guys where he probably, he knows it. He could probably pass lie detector tests like this. So smooth. See, when you go for polygraph, my guess, polygraph, test your biochemistry, test your pulse, test all sorts of things, right? My guess is that he could pass a lie detector test, even though he's lying like this. Okay, so you got to be very careful. The persistent major deceptions out there from his mouth, it's almost comical. I just watch how he talked, what he talked about, how he says it, the information he left out, the tone, the deceptions, right? The devil wants to destroy you. The devil wants to lie to you and accuse you. The devil wants to deceive you. If all that doesn't work, he's going to distract you. Think about that. Okay. So, Gavin appears to be central anti-wealth tax to cater more to the center, even kind of brought on certain people from the right. Once again, I love everyone, okay, on this podcast. to try to garner his image, build his, PR and all that, to kind of position himself to be an upcoming strong candidate representing a D party for the next presidential election. It's quite clear. It's quite clear. So I am very concerned about the far left taking a bit more control. Democrats. I praise the SF Mayor Leary, who is a son-in-law of the Levi's Strauss clan. I praise the San Jose Mayor Matt Mayen. They're doing a great job. They are centrist Democrats. They're pragmatic. San Jose, I encourage everyone, listen to me. The city of San Jose has got 1 million people. It's the biggest city in Northern California. So San Jose, San Francisco matter in Silicon Valley, Bay Area, Northern California. Matt Mayen in San Jose, he even has a real-time dashboard to measure how he and his government's doing on some key important metrics out there. Homelessness, other important metrics. How cool is that? Very transparent, very accountable. I wish the entire country model after him, you see. Not some bullshit, excuse my French, some BS deceptions, political rhetorics to try to gaslight people. Gaslighting means try to deceive you. But if all the inputs in your mind and soul over the years is from deceptive legacy mass media and other echo chambers, and not to mention, I'm a private chief mentor, right? That's my other hat, other than being a businessman, investor. I know that quite a bit. Is that think about the inputs that's been infiltrating your mind and soul, okay, and your nervous system, your K-12 education, your family, your higher education, your echo chambers, the mass media, legacy media, social media. So think about how much of that is really truthful. Law of independence, right? 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1 is perfect. But 0.7 times 0.6 is like 0.42 is far from perfect. Okay, then 0.7 times 0.7 times 0.5 times 0.6 times 0.9 is very imperfect. The end product is going to be actually very suboptimal. That's what's happening. So a lot of young people, including some middle-aged people, are so deceived and gaslighted about the benefits of socialism. Got to be very careful. Okay, parents out there especially, I encourage you to feel free to reach out to me. And got to be very careful. I know that some of your children don't listen to you quite well. It's very difficult. I realize that. Parents are in a very difficult position. Just be very, very careful. America is based on Judeo-Christian values. Let's stick with that,
And one comment to the audience, bring it on. If you have questions that disagree or commentary even from me and Jason, I encourage that. We don't get enough of it. So please do have an opportunity to bring it on, even if you have a different perspective. Just in broadly thinking, I'm going to ask questions on China in about 30 seconds, Jason. I had an incredible guest on that taught me a lot of lessons, Adam Robinson. Hopefully he'll come on shortly again, and reminded me that people in incredible power, Trump and Putin, Xi, and well, maybe that's kind of among the big three, they have information that you, even as a billionaire, you don't have. Mm-hmm. They have information and resources, yet you're making decisions obviously without the full picture. Mm-hmm. When you see them make tactical decisions, they're weighing the odds and the percentages and the risk on information that they have that you don't. So information asymmetry, and that goes back a little bit to Xavier's question from earlier, all lead to the complexities for a family office of kind of what to do next. Jason, a core part of our discussion, US versus China. When does a Cold War get hot? Is it Taiwan? This year or next? South China Sea? Cyber attack? How could this play out?
Very complicated. Ever since the U.S. led the victory of World War II, we've been pretty much the dominant power. A bit of a situation with the Soviets decades ago, but that's fairly solved. And the premise of Americans helping China decades ago was to we believe that it's going to be, play within the world order, which is still pretty much led by the U.S. Okay, and it turned out in recent years not exactly like that, and not to mention the very aggressive gestures, and not visibly the accelerated, very powerful military buildup. Now China's got more warships than the U.S. Okay, and because for a few decades in the past regimes under America in a way has been quite distracted, overspending, unfortunately, very stupidly, trillions on Iraq and some Middle Eastern wars that we could have averted, and we did not even get the damn oil. How stupid is that, right? And, and over time, China has moved in a direction, and I respect all the leaders out there because they're doing what they think is right. And it's come to the point where they are certainly asserting to be the other superpower, potentially militarily, and not to mention the AI, and they became for quite a while, still today, the manufacturing powerhouse. Not to mention some other advantages that really kind of caused some concern on both sides of the aisle in Washington. So, and it's about, kind of, I think there was a term, I think one of the guys in Davos mentioned, I kind of like that, tariffs, Taiwan, and something else, right? And, when it comes to Taiwan, we could, there's so many subsets interconnected to China we could talk about. When it comes to Taiwan, absolutely, it's a hotbed for China. And it is a multi-regime situation since Taiwan sort of, kind of the former leaders defected or kind of built out Taiwan. But like I mentioned last hour, it's a face factor. It's a pride, right? National pride face. And especially with such a strong authoritarian leader in President Xi, Chairman Xi, and it is a national pride thing. Not to mention the economic and military and other implications. Absolutely, both sides are building the capability to go to war. Are they preparing to go at war? I will not. I cannot say that. Okay, they are preparing the capability to go to war, and it is literally space, air, sea, land, cyber. Both sides are very sophisticated in all the above. And one thing about China, Taiwan is a flashpoint. Now, if a hot war actually does happen in the short, medium, or longer term, the chances are it's going to be very devastating for China. Not to mention Taiwan, a bit on the peripheral countries that would be allied with Taiwan. Do you think that the coastal provinces in China, the people, civilians, are not going to get affected? That's not going to happen. The Taiwan Strait is actually not that far apart. It's a very difficult thing. The multi-layered facets of war planning, when you look at the build-up acceleration of what the under Secretary of War, no longer Secretary of Defense, right? Because war equals offense and defense. You could be the best defensive player in the NBA team, but you're not going to win the championship because you have to have great offense in order to win, correct? You have to do both. The acceleration of the buildup of U.S. territorial assets in Philippines, in Japan, implicitly, explicitly within Taiwan, although not too overtly having warships there, that's happening. So it's a preparation, not to mention what we're doing in homeland in the U.S. and also in space, right? There's certain acceleration of some subsystems that's happening. Of course, personally, I would encourage not to go to hot war at all. It's going to be devastating in terms of casualties, economics, plus other implications, rippling throughout the world. One can never say, who the hell knows? One can never say, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? When? No one knows, So
I mean, the odds of China invading Taiwan this year, I'm assuming it's greater than 1%. It may not be 50%, but it may not be inconsequential. And
Correct.
the impact on the world, on the region, on how it could escalate, and the impact on stock markets, governments, AI, there's a,
Right.
whoa,
Not to mention, the parallel system's been happening already. It began years ago. The
true.
parallel systems, right? China wants to catch up and build its assert its dominance throughout the world. The U.S. woke up under Trump 2.0. Actually, it woke up in 1.0, although Trump was a newbie in Washington. Trump 2.0, now Trump 2.5, much more savvy with critical mass, great team around him, et cetera, connections, know-how. And there's a lot more allies than a lot of people think that are actually for the U.S. And although Trump, once again, part of his style, right, art of negotiation is troll people. That's bound to piss some people off, but he kind of does it intentionally sometimes. And to get people on the table, he sets the table, negotiate. Once you get into a room with him, chances are he's going to win. Now when it comes to parallel systems, right? AI, we have to win the AI race, man. China's got massive data. They own it. I used to use WeChat for years and years, right? The joke or the fact is that even if you're overseas Chinese, I'm a Chinese American, right? Everyone's on all the Chinese in China, outside China, or use WeChat. I did it for years, but I stopped using it years ago because I don't want 10 cent and implicitly, the higher ups to have my data, etc. Angelo, most of us in this virtual room, and me, we're being tracked already. Let's face it. Okay, it is what it is, and so I understand how the world really works. I'm hoping. Look at Japan. Look at the some advanced military capabilities Japan is coming up with. The preparation is interconnected. It's happening already. So I hope we're not going to enter into a hot war. And there's a subset topic I want to talk about, but it's outside of scope within this session here. So I'll reserve in talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, we could even get into a stock or public and private company discussion, what's impacted, what happens with Palantir, how about private companies like Underweight that are doing, some would say, interesting things that could be to the US's advantage, but we'll save some of those discussions for a bit of a different time. Going back to what you said, I don't think, and again, Americans can be isolated and somewhat ignorant at times. I do have to admit that China's shipbuilding production compared to ours has been 200 to 1.
Mhm.
They produce more drones in one day than we produce in the whole year.
Right.
Trump is right to talk about that and note that we need to greatly enhance that, not in the future, but now. China has hypersonics, AI warfare, satellite killers. Like it's a very dangerous world. Now,
Right.
let's ignore American families, international families that are, I don't know, playing both sides, looking to invest. How do they restructure some of their asset allocation, their thinking? Should they be more active in Asia? Should they have satellite offices there? How can they invest more aggressively there? There's a nuance of questions we could dive into.
Sure. Okay, let's before I answer, before I give my opinions for international families, let's go back to the U.S. a little bit, right? But there's been acceleration. It's very exciting. Thousands of plans across private sector, public sector as well, because one core thing that Americans need to catch up on, obviously, is really advanced manufacturing capacity, processing capacity, right? There's actually not a lack of critical minerals and all that. In fact, Japan recently, if I'm not incorrect, just discovered a massive set of untapped set of critical minerals close by Japan. That's very exciting because that's part of kind of protecting, reshifting the supply chain, because Americans have been very vulnerable to the Chinese in supply chain, right? And that's why the Trump administration is very important in protecting, upgrading, reshoring, onshoring, and getting rid of a lot of stupid regulations and make it much quicker to build, invest, whether it's AI data centers and putting data centers over liquid gas, and all that, even processing, mineral processing. Most of American land is actually desert. A lot of them is actually over probably like natural gas and some energy sources. So of course we're concerned about, we don't want that in our backyard, correct? We don't want it next to Atherton and San Jose to have a raw mineral processing plant. But you could go to many parts in the Midwest, to certain parts of Nevada, Montana, and all that, right? So, and that's happening already. So, and I'm seeing, I see deal flow on a daily basis, right? It's like all sorts of across the AI layer cake, across all sorts of horizontal sectors and all that. And I think, in summary, I encourage for those family offices, investors here, that's within your within your core interest, to really look into real good opportunities, right? To accelerating the manufacturing capacity, the mineral processing capacity, because most of the processing has been inside China. And so there's a lot of growth ahead in terms of investment and building. So that's a bit of a comment. Now, going to international family, at the end of the day, is very exciting. Trump did a great job along with his team securing at least $6 trillion from foreign governments and also private sectors in reinvesting, like FDI and private sector as well. So, and America this year, I think we ended up last quarter like over 5% GDP at a 30.6 trillion GDP. Do the math, right? And I think this year, don't be surprised that we could be above 5, best case maybe even 6. You do the math, 5% of close to 31 trillion, that's $1.6 trillion additional growth. That $1.6 trillion is greater than the GDP of most countries out there. It's very exciting. And then a lot of those trillions that are secured are not going to spend this year. It's going to spend over years to come, not to mention more coming. So at the end of the day, America is still the safest haven. It's still the haven in investing. Like for me, I don't plan to leave. I love America. I believe in America for the long term, assuming that we're not going to enter into some end time situation. I'm not going to talk about that. So but it is I think look at Europe's degrowth. We're going to see how EU Inc. is going to play out. The massive deregulation make it a lot more expedient for the entrepreneurs in Europe. I think the diminishment of the Iran nuclear power and their sponsorings, they're still doing so. Hezbollah, Hamas and the Houthis and the global sponsorships of terrorism, it's still happening, but it's a bit diminished. Then I'm a bit more comfortable about, it's very exciting watching Saudi Arabia. They're growing, their aggressiveness, building economically in the country, around the world. It's very exciting to watch it. I'm very glad that the US actually has a very good relationship with Saudis, with Qatar. Qatar is very smart. They play all sides. Right? They got China all sides, and then over here in this hotel, here's what's happening, and then a mile later you have CIA operations at US generals. Over here you got Chinese, so they play all sides. They're very smart. They do quite well. They also share much of their natural gas with Iran in the sea, right? UAE is very, very exciting. I'm hoping that Yemen and Somalia, which sit in the mouth of entering into the sea that cuts across the canal into Europe through Egypt. I hope that we're going to contain that a bit more. It's about security. It's about minimizing the probability of issues in the future. You see, and that's what we want, right? Business people, investors, parents. We want to lower the probability of your daughters getting raped by some crazy illegal immigrants. Over 10 million, 20 million a minute. A good fraction of them are truly bad guys. Do you want that? Gangsters, prisoners, mentally ill. Trump is not kidding you. He's correct. He might be incorrect in a few things. He might tell some white lies. So, for example, when he said that Chinese do not use windmill, no, that China Windmill, it's a small fraction of the actual energy generation for the grid and for other things. But looking at the big picture, I would say, bet on the U.S. I think we are growing, man. I mean, we are suffering from 38 trillion in debt. It's a big issue. We're paying poaching 2 trillion on interest, which is stupid. We have to grow our way out of that. There's no other way. We have to grow our way out of that. Innovation, real growth, GDP, stuff more money in people's pockets, growing entrepreneurial, victor mindset, not victimhood mindset, pro growth, deregulation, make it easier to do business, make it safer for us, keep innovating, strong military, and I have more certainty for my kids' future, you see, and not to get so gaslighted by all the deceptions out there.
So much to discuss. We probably have 15, 20 more minutes. Some comments came in. Broadly, I hear what you're saying. I think most immigrants, especially those that follow the legal process, are well-meaning. My family is basically a group of immigrants, yours, yourself.
Myself.
Of course, there's going to be some bad apples that are going to do some bad things. And you must have control of your borders. And people that are illegal, that have committed crimes, well, they should be kicked out. Right. I think it went too far with Trump and ICE, that you have to look at the bigger picture. Those that have families that are contributing to society may be valuable, assuming coming forward and there's a process for them. Again, a small percentage, some words that you used, are going to be bad apples, and those need to be identified, and having a process for that is very important. Others have commented, Angelo, don't forget, Spain has incredible capital controls, limitations on bank withdrawals. The Netherlands is set to potentially tax unrealized capital gains. A comment that came in, I didn't research it, but these are conversations that are happening. US does have some tremendous advantages. We don't report to the CRS. It is a tax haven for international people. I could maybe use a stronger word. Oceans on both sides, powerful military, rule of law. We are, for now and for the foreseeable future, the world settles in dollars. That's very, very important. We have Wall Street, the world of finance, the stock market, VC, incredible farmland, energy resiliency, incredible natural resources. There are, by luck of our land, and here we are, and the culture of our people, at least how it used to be, coming in and unifying morality and culture of independence, of wanting freedom and believing in personal property rights, gave America tremendous advantages. And we may be giving some of them away. There's grave challenges, as I noted, and this is why we can't be silent. We must have conversations and be able to hopefully have a positive influence on younger people coming up, those illegally coming here to the country, which we would encourage if it's legal and within the process, and the opportunity to have value, to create something.
Right. There are a couple of parts here, right? One thing it's about immigration, Spain and some of the countries out there, et cetera, and wealth protection and the and the rights and some of that. It drives me nuts whenever I see deceptive news headlines about anti-immigration. That's far from the truth. If you have to get in here legally, you have to, in fact, right now, it's really, the world changes in ways where we have to acquire, smart, value-added immigrants. Okay, and that got in line because why would we want to pay tens of billions or over 100 billion nationally for a whole bunch of illegal immigrants that don't add value? Now, my heart goes to the ones that actually add value. Frankly speaking, I think some of our farmers, we need them. Take care of them, but got to get rid of the bad guys. Okay, that's what's happening now. When you look at one of the things the news does not report is all the good news, right? All these tens of thousands and et cetera arrests that are good things. They don't report that. They report on some snippets, on some roughing up some illegal immigrants. And now ICE does make some mistakes. I hate it. If some ICE agents did something real bad that's illegal, confiscate them, put their asses into jail. That should not be done, right? But don't be deceived that that's actually the mass majority of what's happening. That's not true. It's deceptive, right? Now, when it comes to I'm an immigrant, a whole bunch of Silicon Valley, we're built quite a bit by immigrants, right? Even the current startups and investors are immigrants. Even the vast majority of Sequoia Capital's managing partners have been immigrants. Okay, Elon Musk, immigrants, a lot of immigrants. We depend on good immigrants. And when it comes to Spain, one thing I noticed when President Xi went to Europe recently, of course he visited, a couple of major countries and met with some EU and all that. And Spain was one of the very few that welcomed him. And when you look at the parade by President Xi, you got Putin next to him, you got the North American President Kim next to him. Those are the two guys by him. And when you go to Spain, Spain is the only major NATO country that did not comply to, you have to pony up 5% and not to freeload on NATO's budget, right? So to kind of watch what's going on within the government's belief system, what's important to them. Is it a geopolitical risk worth taking? Is it, Spain's a great country to travel to. That's why watch the potential upcoming elections of sustainability and build for adaptability and speed, and not to park yourself in jurisdictions along with the different shifting powers and all that. That's going to get you into some deep kimchi, Singapore is exciting. I'm not going to name particular countries and all that, but I pay quite a bit of attention.
Of course. And I hear what you're saying. I think it becomes hard, only letting people that have resources, intelligence, and provide value. We have lots of services, blue collar work that in this country, a lot of Americans don't want to do. We could have a better system for importing or accepting immigrants. You as a person under God's eyes are not totally judged by your IQ. IQ is important to make proper decisions, to make money and resources, but your ability to be a good citizen, your ability to love, your ability to add value, there's other skill sets that are very, very much needed. Right. And I wouldn't limit it by, it's as limited by your intelligence and what's your current, PhD, and do you have that? And sure, that's good for some of the reasons that you noted. And again, population decline, not as much of an issue here in America yet as it is in other parts of the world, South Korea, Japan, and much of Europe. A couple that's married, two people that maybe has one children, that's nowhere near a replacement rate, which is probably about 2.1 or 2.2. I have more questions than answers. I don't have the answers to much of these complexities. Now we know why presidents and others, politicians, they also gray so much in a short amount of time. It is incredibly stressful. And there are grave challenges that they have to face all the time. Perhaps we could end our discussion talking about something that you hinted at in our China discussion, and the audience would know dear to my heart, and that would be AI. I think broadly, countries, family offices gravely underestimate, actually underhype AI. And this is a race between the US and China effectively only. I could get deeper into AGI and what does ASI mean. The future of capitalism is going to change as energy cost inevitably will go to near zero one day, and robotics and other services will bring labor costs to near zero. So that's a deeper, more futuristic discussion, what 10 or 15, 20 years could look at. But right now, we might have an IP advantage. We do not have an energy advantage. We do not have a manufacturing advantage. Therefore, the race between supremacy of AI and what it means to military, to manufacturing, to production, to government, to so many different things, we are gravely, gravely underestimating. And if the other candidate came into office that was not Trump, they wanted to have controls. They wanted so many different things that would have put us so far behind. China would have dominated within, I think, 4 to 6 years, and it would have been game over. So what do you think about the race, the AI race, the impact of energy and manufacturing, and why the US is losing aspects of that? We are not in total dominance relative to AI at all. It is very close.
Right. Let's truncate that into governments, economics, and military. Okay. Now, ask me the same question again if I forget to respond to you. But when you look at China, it's very interesting. It's surrounded by all sorts of countries, right? Some of them are sort of adversarial. China's got, like you mentioned, in fact, they are very smart. You get close to one half of the AI scientists are frankly speaking, Chinese, which is very interesting. Unlike the old days where software, SaaS, a lot of Indians, right? And Indians very smart as well. But when it comes to maritime, actually China has a grave disadvantage. Okay, it's got only a coast that connects the coast to Japan and North Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, and then Philippines, right? And Americans are everywhere, and Southeast Asia. Okay, then you got Russia, and you got a couple of countries that are in dispute, and you got allies and all that. So they actually have a maritime disadvantage. And the reason that China's been so aggressive building up the non-oil fossil fuel dependent energy source, even though the majority is still, burning coal now and fossil, correct, today, but they are aggressively building up the other energy. They're way, way, way ahead when it comes to next generation nuclear, which is still a small part, but it's accelerating. We are catching up right now. And, when it comes to goes back to AI facilitates decision making, facilitates getting a lot more smart things done with less time, and also being able to do advanced research, create new systems, right? So AI is sort of like a new powerful reconfiguration of your heart and the brain in your human body. Okay, but it does not have a soul. Okay, humans are still souls. So when it comes to potential hot war, China, you have to think about that. China could be crippled fairly easily. They have to go through the Strait of Malacca. They have to import a lot of food, and they have to go through Japan. Okay, now the U.S. will be controlling the maritime of Greenland. Those are strategic situations. Okay, and remember, China actually depends gravely to the world on many things that sustain their society over a billion. Reportedly 1.4 billion. I don't know what the numbers are. Okay, so they actually have quite a bit of a disadvantage. And for those in the know, it's useful to note. Now, when it comes to AI, when it comes to the Chinese government having these board meetings, right, these plenums and all that, AI is right on top of the agenda. America, Trump with David Sachs as the AI and crypto czar, and with Silicon Valley, with the rest of all these mini micro Silicon Valleys around the West and the world, we have to dominate. We have to win in AI. If you allow the greatest elephant in the room, China is both an adversary and a partner when it comes to mutual economics, and also some cultural as well. We have to win it, right? When Trump allowed Jensen Huang, NVIDIA, to sell H200 to China, people kind of jump, oh my God, that's not good. In a way, it's not good. In a way, it's good. Huawei is racing with government support to build up its AI chip power. I heard from Eric Schmidt, right? A former Google Alphabet chairman and CEO, in a private room in FII Miami. We're in a private room together with a small group. I was very privileged to listen to some insights by him. I'm not going to tell you everything, but I learned that the physics, the down like 2.4 nanometers or something about 2 is the physics limit, right? It cannot go down further. So we're approaching that already here. That means you had more capacity, more power. Each chip could do more things faster, you see. So now the good news, the bad news is that you're helping China build a capacity, but the good news is that part of the AI stack are still American selling to the Chinese, assuming that the government is going to allow that. So when it comes to, once again, AI stack, solution stack, ecosystem, think of it as a 5-layer cake. Jensen Huang said it, right? Think of it, you're looking at GPUs, you got your energy, different energy sources, the grid, data centers, and then you got your cloud AI, and the infrastructure has been most of the talks and the investment activities, right? And some of them are late. There's still quite a bit of opportunities for those that like to get a piece of action. Look into that. And then you got the edge AI. Part of that is physical AI. Okay, it's physical AI. It's been happening for a long, long time already. Automated manufacturing, automated cars, right? Waymo. Now Elon's catching up, and Optimus is going to be tremendous. It's going to take a while. What I learned is that the most complex part is really the hand. The human hand is actually very complicated.
Exactly.
Perfect the hand is going to take quite a while. And I could imagine hundreds of millions or more of robots assisting you, over time. It's not going to happen too soon. I'm not going to be the 1.0. Let the Silicon Valley, kind of let those guys. I'll probably version 2.0. I'll jump in and use it myself. And then you got to apply AI, the services, the applications, right? You got vertical AI. My own tech company at Zero, we're doing something very exciting. We're disrupting a large $700 billion industry. We're creating a new category, right, for vertical, and also within applied AI that solves real problem in plain sight in ways that's so efficient, so fast. It's going to be, vast. Those are things happening over here. Those are opportunities, you see. So overall, the U.S. and China both think the same way. They are both trying to dominate. When you ship AI stack, if this country, a small African country, is all bought in, completely fully installed with Chinese AI stack, we're out. So you got to get in soon, you see. And then for part of larger countries, maybe multi parts. Right? Even some American tech companies use AI models from China. And for good and for bad, got to be very careful because some of your data might get routed back, right? So in summary, we have to be the winners, man. We have to really move. It's moving already, and I think we're moving in the right direction. I think each side, U.S. and China, has got strengths and some relative weaknesses, but things are changing so fast right now. Lots of investment and business opportunities within those ecosystems. I'm excited.
And maybe related to that, AI kills labor advantages, or will. Information asymmetries is noted. If your wealth is built on either, one, what's the pivot? And maybe a little bit related, I would say wrong question. Well, invest in AI question, maybe the right question. How to use AI to defend existing wealth from inevitable destruction. And it's going to be horizontal in everything. And even how we look at stocks and invest, you have to ask about these companies. If AI is 10x a year from now, what it is now, what's going to be the impact on that company, that sector? How are they going to pivot? And are you in a losing investment? These are not easy answers to complex questions.
Let me be blunt. A friend of mine, Jack Hidary, he used to be a head of from Google X. In fact, he coached my older daughter, Sabrina into her 8th year as a senior software engineer, team leader at Google. Right, my younger daughter is also in tech, in Stripe, Lydia, and Sabrina go, oh my God, AI is so hard. Right, that was a couple of years ago. Now Jack is running his new company called Sandbox AG. He's smart as hell, smart as hell,
for sure.
And ask me the question again, Angelo. Ask me a question again.
I mean, the bigger picture of it was, if AI inevitably 3x, 5x, closer to 10x in 12 to 18 months, it's going to impact companies. Their moats are coming down. How we invest and look at public and private companies is going to need to radically change.
Let me be blunt in this case here. Okay, AI or die. That's a header. That's a title of his book. AI or die. It is that simple. Okay. So for those that are ignorant, don't be ignorant. Get some help. Okay. In fact, when it comes to Gen Z, so I tell parents all the time, my private clients, right, and also my friends, is that get your Gen Z, unless they're lazy asses who don't learn, but if they have a brain, they're very into AI and tech. Get them to reverse mentor you. Get them to help you implement, and I do that all the time with my own daughters to help my wife, right? And some of the Gen Zs are brilliant when it comes to the speed of adapting and using technology and AI. Some of them are still learning. And in fact, Jensen gave a very good example. And I could give you a lot of examples as well. You're a nurse, okay? The average nurse, unfortunately, spend around one half, more or less, of the time doing some mundane work, right? Some filing, clerical work, etc. Imagine you're going to use AI to do a good part of that, to free up a good part of your time. You're going to spend more time with patients. That means you can spend more time with more patients. That means the hospital or the clinic are going to be able to bring in, accelerate getting more patients, and they're going to raise the revenue and growth. How cool is that, right? In fact, that's going to generate more jobs for more nurses because demand is rising. It's a victor mindset, not the victim mindset. Okay, it's not like all AI is going to wipe out a lot of jobs. Now, some jobs are going to be wiped out for sure. And more, the junior software engineers and mundane coding right now become very good in prompting, and then have, you did it, right, Angelo, get them to write programs for you. And even the software engineers that are smart, they're using that to free up their time to more complicated, advanced, critical thinking human work, you see? So your AI could help you become more productive, get you more creative. I myself, I am completing cloning Jason Ma using a Gen AI right now. It's been so helpful, so helpful. Free up my time, get me more productive, help me with advanced research, craft strategies, other things that I could never do myself. In fact, part of AGI, part of artificial general intelligence is here already, because I'm noticing that the latest open AI, ChatGPT, Claude, from Anthropic, XAI Grok and Gemini, Google Gemini. Part of what they do, they're smarter than me already. They can do things I cannot do. Artificial super intelligence it's maybe a lingo from Silicon Valley that's way years and years and years away, but part of AGI is here already. So in summary, AI or die.
And maybe that kind of answers a very quick final question I had as we wrap up. What's the catastrophe that everyone can see but refuses to act on? I have a story that I tell at my events about the Detroit paradox, that in the 60s, Detroit, a thriving city, three of the largest companies on earth, they saw the rise of the Japan automakers, but they elected through arrogance, ego, confidence of existing success that they think would last forever, until it didn't. Really, within 10 years, it radically changed. Possibly the answer to what's the catastrophe everyone can see but refuses to act on, it may simply be the impact of AI and their slowness to adapt to it. I would probably, if I had to keep it 2 sentences, that might do it for me.
My greatest concern, and I believe, if I did not hear incorrectly from Eric Schmidt a couple of months ago, last year, my greatest concern is if AI gets unchecked in ways where this political race between the powers, right? Mostly it's between US and China, and plus other countries that are getting more and more effective using AI for their own sovereignty, for public-private sectors. If the military part gets too hyper competitive, I don't have an answer. We don't have an answer on when and how that might get out of control. Because if we get into a nuclear Holocaust situation, all bets are off. Okay, that's a part where, so we'll see about that. So.
Oh, so much, Jason. A little over 2 hours, 20 questions on the cutting room floor, but I did want to keep it a little more concise than the last time. We will not wait 18 months to have Jason back. There's so much going on in the world and so much to see where we were right, where we were wrong, even looking 6 to 9 months from now. Jason, for those that would like to learn more about you, 3EQ, tell us a little bit about what you do and how people could learn more and reach out.
My headline in my family business, 3EQ, spell it out, THREE, EQ.com, is simply preparing next-gen leaders and strengthening legacies, right, in families and businesses, in enterprises and CEOs and leaders. And I guess my 2 hats, to keep it simple, is being a chief mentor to next gens, to individuals, to senior leaders, and to families, and being a bit of a global rainmaker, major deal maker, and a strategic advisor to enterprises and single family offices. I just happen to get invited to speak quite a bit across all sorts of family office summits. Opal Group I love, in fact, Camden Wealth and IPI, the CEO and I hit it off real well. Suddenly invited me to speak. I'm very, very picky. You'll find me and see me in all sorts of, selected. I'm very selective. I say no a lot. These family office summits as a speaker, they typically kind of put me into the opening panel or opening fireside to light up the room and set the stage, set the table, kind of. And sometimes I become the forum chair for the entire show to light up the room, right? To inspire people, keep things on time, etc. So speaking is a bit of a sideshow. Just go to 3EQ, threeeq.com. There's a lot of complimentary writings and videos and quite a bit of thought leadership. And if I can help you, feel free to reach out. So.
You're the best, Jason. I greatly appreciate you. Everyone, I'm Angelo Robles. Subscribe on @FamilyOffice and Family Office TV on YouTube. I'm very active on LinkedIn, somewhat active on X. Going to be trying some new streaming platforms just to be a little bit younger and dynamic, reaching a younger audience this year. Very soon. I look forward to that. I have a private intelligence and strategy community for family offices, SFO continuity. I got some incredible global families. I'm very lucky. And I love everything around, especially the single family office community, and like to think deeper about geopolitics, macroeconomics, investing, AI, infrastructure, architecture of family offices than I think that most do. That's my bailiwick. That's my love and passion. Go to angelorobles.com and simply learn more and consider membership. I greatly appreciate Jason. It's not always easy in the family office world to find guests that talk about sensitive topics and areas even around Davos and broadly geopolitics. I would love to have more on, and I would love to have more on from a different perspective. I think that would be wonderful. If you have suggestions, feel free to reach out to me, make an email intro, a connection, whatever you want to do. I do remain open-minded. I appreciate Jason, his wonderful insights, and I look forward to the next time. Those of you that are in Miami, a reminder, I'll be at Uncorrelated leading their family office day this upcoming Monday, January 26th. And my marquee program for my members over 4 days is March 16th through the 19th in Palm Beach. Thank you all so much. Again, a special thank you to Jason. Appreciate all of you in the comments and that have watched or listened or will watch it or listen in a recording. You're all great. Safe travels. Be careful during this massive storm that we're having over much of the US in the coming days. Thank you so much. And again, Jason, one last thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was a blast. Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you.